السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له يحيي ويميت وهو حي لا يموت وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا وقدوتنا محمد صلوات ربي وسلامه عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. وارض اللهم عن آله وعن الصحابة والتابعين وارض اللهم عنا معهم أجمعين. يا أيها الناس اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. فإن خير الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. إن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, I want to talk to you today about somebody who I cherish and I talk about every single opportunity that I can. Now, I knew this was going to be a khutbah during summer. I assumed there was going to be a handful of the younger generation here. So hopefully, the choice of this khutbah topic is aligns with the younger audience, but also the older audience. I know many of you are familiar with who I'm going to talk about. And the reason that I love him so much, and the reason that he connects with me, two reasons actually. The first is because most of his story takes place during his teens and early 20s. So he's one of the youngest Sahaba that we know about. And he actually dies either before his 30s or in his early 30s, depending. Point is, he dies very young. That's point number one. He's a young Sahabi, and he gets a lot done in that small amount of time that he had. And the second reason that his story resonates with me is because he is the first ambassador to Islam. He's the first person to take the role of teaching Islam or representing Islam in a foreign land. he spends a lot of his time as a minority person. It's him and a few Muslims in an area where it's predominantly non-Muslims. And there's a reason that resonates, because every single person sitting in this room is an ambassador to Islam, whether you want to be an ambassador to Islam or not. You all represent Islam by virtue of where you live. And so for those two reasons, inshallah, some of you know who I'm talking about. And if you don't, then pay extra special attention. I talk about Mus'ab ibn Umayr. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, every chance that I get. I'm going to introduce Mus'ab very briefly, and then I'm going to look at 3 stages of his life. Hopefully, again, if you do know about his story, something resonates with you, I'm hoping we can take at least one lesson from the life of Mus'ab ibn Umayr into our daily lives. Just something that we've seen him, that you see in his story, that you can implement, inshallah, every day. Okay? So, Mus'ab is from, we just said, Ibn Umayr. He's from the Bani Abdari clan, and his dad, Umayr, dies when he's a very young boy. So he's an orphan, the only child of his mother, Khunnas bint Malik. She becomes very important in his story later. But anyway, Bani Abdari. A lot of people don't really hear about the Bani Abdari clan. We're used to hearing about some of the more powerful clans of Quraysh. The reason we don't hear about the Bani Abdari is because they don't have that many people. But they're one of the wealthiest clans in Mecca. There's a hadith that describes the wealth. So when his father died, Mus'ab inherited all that wealth. The wealth that Mus'ab inherited was equal to half of the wealth of Mecca. So all of the rich people of Mecca were on one side, and then the other half was Mus'ab ibn Umayr's money. This is the level of wealth that we're talking about. And I want to give you a visual of what that looked like. It's not that he had this money and it was in a bank somewhere. He lived this wealth. Mus'ab used to get specially tailored clothes, specially tailored shoes, gold bracelets. Even as a baby, he had gold on his hands, he had the best and the newest of everything. His mother spent a lot of time and effort making sure wherever Mus'ab was, he looked the nicest, he smelled the nicest, he has the most awesome stuff. There's a hadith that talks about, and this, I mention this hadith every time I talk about Mus'ab, because it's so funny to me, the length that she went to. So his mother used to pay somebody to ride a horse and rush down to Yemen on that horse and pay extra for all the people who are going to come up to Mecca, display all their goods, shoes, clothes, jackets. She'd pay extra money for a person to rush down to Mecca and stop them, tell them, spread out all your stuff here, and the guy would pick some stuff for Mus'ab and go back to Mecca just so that Mus'ab would be wearing these things like 2 weeks before everybody else. Like, that's how much she did Amazon Prime shipping just for Mus'ab ibn Umayr. This is the level of wealth that he had. And this is not normal for his time period. So when you're thinking of how wealthy Mus'ab is, I want Jeff Bezos level, Mr. Beast level, you know? This is a guy who had all of the money in the world that he could ask for. But if that was his whole story, I wouldn't waste everybody's time by talking about him, right? If that was everything that we know about Mus'ab ibn Umayr, we wouldn't be talking about him today. So what happened? This guy, rich, young, also very well liked. He was an influencer in Mecca, again, borrowing modern technology, or modern terminology. When people saw Mus'ab doing something, they wanted to do it. There are a hadith about people not being able to afford the perfume that Mus'ab had, and so they would make knockoffs. Like, so people had to set up shops of knockoff perfumes so you can smell like Mus'ab. This is the level that he was at. Because he's so popular, he's talking to people, he hears eventually that there's these people in Dar al-Arqam, they're talking about a new religion, and he gets curious. Mus'ab sneaks into one of these gatherings, it's nighttime, they're meeting, they're sitting around Rasulullah ﷺ, and I want you to imagine the room that Mus'ab walked into. Mus'ab walked into a room as the richest man in Mecca, with Bilal and Khabbab and probably some of the poorest people that exist in his society. Sitting around Rasulullah in a tiny room, they're hiding, But who's speaking? Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. The words enter Mus'ab's heart, and as soon as that meeting is done, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam finishes what he's talking about. He's talking about heaven and hellfire and explaining Tawheed to the Sahaba. He accepts Islam. The message enters his heart, he accepts Islam, and this sincerity carries throughout the story of Mus'ab ibn Umair. At every single one of the stops that we're going to stop at in his life, you notice and can see the sincerity in Mus'ab ibn Umair. And I want you to focus on that. This first characteristic of Mus'ab being his sincerity. He accepts Islam. He has to keep it secret. Muslims at this time are not practicing openly. However, because he's so popular, and because everybody knows his mom is wealthy, somebody goes and snitches, tells the mom, hey, I saw your son, he's with these people, you might want to check on that. Okay? Mus'ab ibn Umair's mom calls him. She brings his uncles from the Bani Abdari clan, and they gather in front of him and they're like, is this true? Have you joined this other religion? Mus'ab doesn't lie, he tells them, yeah, that's what happened, it's the truth. You guys should join too. He starts doing da'wah. His uncles are in a very difficult situation. When Bilal accepts Islam, you take him and you put a rock on him and you beat the Sahaba in public, it's because these people are not from powerful tribes. And more importantly, they're not popular. But if you take Mus'ab and you put him into the street and you start beating him, all his friends, all his people, his followers are going to be like, what's going on? And now, because he's accepted Islam, he could push other people into Islam. And this difficult situation that he puts them in, because he's a popular guy, his mother comes up with a solution. She says, I'm going to put you in a room in the house, door locked, that's it. The only way you get out of that room is you leave this religion. And this is not somebody, again, think of Bilal, think of Khabbab. Well, these are great Sahaba. They never tasted the pleasures of this dunya. They never had fine silks. Mus'ab had all this stuff and is giving it away. He said, no, khalas, I've accepted this religion. You guys should accept it too. I'll stay in the room. No worries. And this is my first, there's three instances where I'm focusing on Mus'ab. The first one is Mus'ab, the steadfast convert. He took his deen seriously. He accepted Islam, that's it. It's the truth, it's the truth. A lot of stuff happens between the point that I'm about to jump to. I wish I could cover every single detail of Mus'ab's life. You should look into it. But for now, Mus'ab accepts Islam. They put him in the room in the house. They don't let him out. He hears the Muslims are going to Abyssinia to escape. He escapes with them. Eventually, they come back. There was a rumor, and he believed the rumor, so he came back. It turns out that the rumor wasn't true. The point is, Mus'ab is back in Mecca. He's left for a little while because he escaped, and then he comes back. And his mom, who sees him, is like, I got you again, khalas, you have to get, this is the be-all, end-all. Accept, let go of your religion, or we're going to have trouble. And Mus'ab, with all due respect, tells his mother, anybody that you tell to guard me again and put me in jail again, I'm going to fight them. Either they kill me, or I kill them, and it's trouble either way. Here's the deal, Mom. Leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone. And on that day, Mus'ab went from a net worth of billions to $0. As a youth, as a teenager, presented with the opportunity of billions of dollars and everything that he wanted in this world, because of his steadfast belief in Islam, he told his mom, khalas, keep it. Goodbye. He leaves and spends the rest of his life dedicating it to Rasulullah alayhi salatu. He sits next to Rasulullah. He learns all that he can of Islam during this time period. This dedication to knowledge, this steadfast convert belief that he had, leads him to the next stage in his life where people from a city called Yathrib, most of you are familiar with the name Yathrib, visit Mecca and they learn about Islam. And key fact about these people, they're all young. These are leaders of Yathrib, and they're all young. The reason that they're young leaders is because their fathers all killed each other because of the wars in Yathrib. But the point is, these leaders come, they accept Islam, and Rasulullah has to make a decision. He's in Mecca with all 10 of Al-Ashara Mubashirin bil Jannah. All 10 of the Sahaba that have been promised Jannah while they were alive are with him as Muslims right now in Mecca. But he chooses Mus'ab ibn Umayr to be the one to go with them. A youth. A dedicated, sincere youth. And the reason for Mus'ab being chosen, and the result, you're going to see what happens, and Allahu A'lam, but Mus'ab could relate to the people that he's talking to. He was of their age and of their generation, and he was adaptable. He could adapt to what's happening around him because he's still not set in his ways. That's the advantage of youth. So, despite being in a time where there's Hamza and Umar, Mus'ab is chosen, and he goes with Rasulullah, with the 6 people from Yathrib, making 7 total who are in, 7 total who are walking back from Mecca after Hajj, making their way to what's eventually going to be called Medina. Like we said, Yathrib is all wars, and so the people fighting each other, they know you got to be careful who you talk to, what you say to them, etc. They assign Mus'ab a young man named As'ad ibn Zurara. They say, As'ad, take care of Mus'ab. He's new here. He's going to be giving da'wah, but just take care of him so he knows who to talk to. Mus'ab sits in gatherings. He talks to people. Word spreads. And some of the leaders of the tribes in Yathrib hear, there's a guy, he's preaching this new religion, what's going on? So, Usayd ibn Hudayr, one of the leaders of the tribe in Yathrib, goes and he's like, I can deal with this, it's easy. He goes, finds where Mus'ab is sitting, walks up to him, holding a spear. And As'ad, sitting next to Mus'ab, is like, pay attention, that guy is a leader among his people. He could kill you right here and nobody would say anything. But at the same time, if he accepts Islam, a lot of people might follow him. So, Mus'ab looks up at Usayd ibn Hudayr, and Usayd is like, what are you guys doing here? I hear that you're changing the religion of my people, you're tricking, some silly people who are following you. I need you to go. And he kind of like motions with the spear, like you're gonna leave or we're gonna start talking with the spear. And again, notice the sincerity of Mus'ab ibn Umayr, sitting on the ground, looking up into a spear, knowing that this person can kill him and nobody's gonna say anything. He's that powerful. Mus'ab looks at him and he says, I heard that you're a leader among your people. So you must be wise. You must be intelligent. I have no problems listening to you. Sit down with me. Hear what I have to say. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'm going to pack up and go. Usayd is so impressed with this kid who's sitting in front of him and the sincerity in his message that he agrees. He says, okay, I'll sit. Why wouldn't I sit? Why am I going to be afraid of somebody saying a few words? And this isn't Mus'ab having studied, not to diminish scholarhood, but it's not that he studied like 10 years at Al-Azhar, right? Mus'ab ibn Umayr is working with just the parts of the Quran that came down in Mecca. The surah that he reads that so impacts Usayd ibn Hudayr, Surah Al-A'la. The vast majority of the people in this room have memorized Surah Al-A'la. Like, don't underestimate the power of the truth. As Muslims, our aqeedah is one of the most easily explained and most directly explained aqeedahs on earth. Just the power of Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakun lahu kufuwan ahad. There's not a single other religion today that can explain God that easily and that succinctly, and that powerfully and that intuitively. The power of Tawheed alone is what's giving Mus'ab the confidence to just sit there and know, I'm going to talk to these people about Islam, I'm not going to do anything offensive, I'm going to be nice to them, but that my message is going to get through anyway. That's the power of the message of Tawheed when it enters an open heart. And it's also telling about how the Sahaba were, how sincere they were. Usayd ibn Hudayr was ready to kill this kid because he was suspicious of him. He was like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what you're doing. Once he listens to the message of Islam, he accepts it on the spot. He's sitting there with Mus'ab. He doesn't care that he's younger than him. He doesn't care that maybe other people are going to be upset about this. He accepts Islam right there. And he tells Mus'ab, I know somebody that if he accepts Islam, your doors are open. Khalas, it's done. Yathrib is at your service. So he went from, I want to kill this person, to a da'i in the span of an hour. And again, he doesn't have that much of the message. All he knows is tawheed, and that's it. Like Bilal, when he's asked, Bilal was asked later in his life, why, when you were being tortured, did you say ahadun ahad? Well, why were you saying that? He said, that's all I knew. That's all I knew of the religion. But it's the most powerful piece of it, the one God. So, Usayd ibn Hudayr leads Mus'ab to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who's a leader among his people. Sa'd, basically the same thing happens. Sa'd accepts Islam, and Sa'd tells his people, I've accepted Islam. All of you, you want to deal with me, you should be Muslim. No marriage deals, no business deals, no nothing. And if you don't know what Islam is or you have questions, that young man right there, he has the answers. Go talk to him. In less than a year, between Hajj, when Mus'ab left, and Hajj the next year, that same group returns to Mecca. They left as 7 people and returned as 70 people, with too many people left that they had to leave behind. Over 50 people that they left back in Yathrib. Eventually, Yathrib becomes Medina. And so one of the Sahaba comments, can you imagine having the ajr of Medina? Everybody who enters Medina, everybody who prays in Medina, every Sahabi who accepted Islam in Medina, all of that ajr goes to Mus'ab ibn Umair. Imagine how much, and he dies a shaheed, as if he doesn't even really need all that, but subhanAllah, yani. This message, Mus'ab, the light in the dark, that's what I call him in this instance when he's in Yathrib. He went there in a land with 0 Muslims, and he turned it into a land full of Muslims. Just because of how he acted and because of his sincerity. So, the people of Mecca love Mus'ab. They remember that this is the man who gave up his wealth for Allah. And the people of Medina love Mus'ab because this is the person who guided me to Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam and through them to Islam. This leads to the third Mus'ab that we talk about, which is Mus'ab, the flag bearer of Islam. During the Battle of Badr, which is the first battles the Muslims have, Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam chooses Mus'ab to be the flag bearer. And the person who's holding the flag, that's where the fighting is the most. And they don't have radios, they don't have technology during this time. So if you look up and you see the flag, you know your side is winning. But if you look up and you can't see your flag, that's a bad sign in a battle. And so this is an honor, but it's a place that you have to give somebody very, very intentionally. This person needs to know they're in a special place. And because he's loved by the people, the Sahaba of Mecca, and he's loved by the Sahaba of Medina, Mus'ab is chosen to be the flag bearer twice, in Uhud, in Badr and in Uhud. For the sake of time, I want to skip to the end of the story of Uhud, because that's the last message we have from Mus'ab ibn Umair is at Uhud. The last hadith about his life is there, because he dies on that day in Uhud. During the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims are winning. There's a specific plan, I don't want to get, again, too bogged down in the details, but there's a specific plan Rasulullah ﷺ puts in place, and 50 people are supposed to be on a hill. They're protecting the flanks of the Muslims. When they see that it looks like the Muslims have won, and they're seeing the other Muslims are collecting some of the gold and the swords and the shields and the fancy stuff that's on the battlefield, and the reason I'm hitting on this, the irony is that all of this is stuff that Mus'ab gave up. All of this is stuff that already Mus'ab had in his hands, and he said, I don't need this. But some people are weak to this sort of thing, to the dunya, and so they ran down to start to collect some of the things that are on the battlefield. Khalid ibn al-Walid, radiallahu anhu, at the time he's on the other side, fighting with the mushrikeen. He takes the army around the mountain. The 10 people who are left on the hill, he takes them out and comes from behind, destroys the Muslim army. Mus'ab is in this battle, and he sees the forces coming towards the Muslims where Rasulullah ﷺ is. And because he's holding the standard, because he has the flag, he starts waving it, knowing that they're going to chase him, knowing that he can draw their attention before they see where Rasulullah ﷺ is. To protect Rasulullah, he starts waving the flag and running the other direction, leading the people away so that Rasulullah ﷺ has time to go up the mountain and get to safety. And this is his last action in the dunya. This is the last thing that he does before he's killed as a shaheed, a spear through the heart, in this moment, as he's holding the flag. I want you to think about the sincerity of Mus'ab ibn Umayr in the three situations that we mentioned. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم استغفروه فإنه غفور رحيم. Bismillah wa salamu ala rasulillah. May Allah accept your istighfar and replace your bad deeds inshallah with good deeds. Ameen ya Rabb. I want to zero in on the three messages again of Mus'ab ibn Umayr, and then I'm going to take a contemporary example, and then we can, inshallah, make our way to the Jumu'ah prayer. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the steadfast convert. He's somebody who accepted Islam at a young age and saw the power in that message enough to leave everything in the dunya behind. None of us, I think, are related to Jeff Bezos in here. None of us have billionaire wealth. But he gave that up. I don't know what I would do in a situation like that. I've never been put in that situation. I've never had $1 million in front of me. But Mus'ab had that, and he gave it up for the sake of Allah. Mus'ab, the light in the dark. He went to a place and he multiplied by 10 the number of Muslims in that place. Over 10, actually. All with the small ayat of Juz' Amma that many of us memorize when we're children. And finally, he was the flag bearer of Rasulullah ﷺ, the flag bearer of the Muslimin. So dedicated and beloved by every senior and junior Sahabi, every generation of the Sahaba loved Mus'ab ibn Umayr. And there's so many ahadith, some of the ones that I mentioned are people 10, 15 years after his death remembering Mus'ab ibn Umayr. And that's the hadith where we learn about how his life was in Mecca. They're saying, among us was Mus'ab during the early days. He's one of the legends. So, these three stances, again, I know it's a lot, but there's small things that we can do just to emulate the energy of Mus'ab ibn Umayr, to emulate the ideology of Mus'ab ibn Umayr. How many situations are we put in where we have to choose the dunya or Islam? I've been put in situations where I have to choose between prayer and school, or prayer and work, or prayer and just stopping somewhere to find a masjid to pray, and just prayer and 5 minutes of my time. Compare that to the choice Mus'ab had to make. Think about him in an instance where you have to make that choice and consciously choose Islam, consciously choose to leave the dunya for a second and connect with Allah. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. I'm saying it easily, but it's a lot harder than just saying it. All of us, like I said, are ambassadors of this deen. Giving da'wah isn't just being at a booth and talking to people about Islam, although that's part of it, and some people do that, and if that's something you want to do, go for it. But da'wah the da'wah that Mus'ab gave was him believing in Tawheed among people who don't believe in Tawheed. He stood against Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, and when he was talking to him, what Sa'd took from that, he said, I believe in the one God, and all of you are believing in multiple gods. That's the key that he took from Mus'ab ibn Umayr. And again, back to Bilal, same thing. So you all have Tawheed with you. Just your belief in Tawheed alone. is enough to give da'wah with. And then finally, representing Islam. Being the flag bearer doesn't just mean holding a flag in a battle. Mus'ab ibn Umayr maybe had to do that, but for you, how many times are you walking around and you see somebody with a kafiyya or wearing the zi of the Muslimin, and you just feel a connection to that person, you feel proud that this person is there. Your smile, when you connect your smile to, I'm smiling because it's a sunnah. These are all ways to represent Islam. So there's small ways to take Muslim into our lives. I'm sure there's many more that you guys can do. I just wanted to give you 3 examples. I'm fairly certain my time is up. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم اشفنا واشف أمراضنا وأمراض المسلمين. وارحم اللهم موتانا وموتى المسلمين. اللهم انصر أهلنا في غزة يا رب. اللهم انصر أهلنا في غزة يا رب. اللهم أنزل عليهم الصبر والسلوان يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أهلنا في السودان. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وأعز الإسلام والمسلمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم اشفي مرضى المسلمين يا رب. وارحمنا يا رب العالمين وتقبل منا أعمالنا يعني توفنا مع الأبرار. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.